Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, we talk being strong, smart, and bold with Niki Kelly. Check it out. Woo! Greetings, I am Tom Earl, and this is my year of adventure. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you're here today, sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. As you can see, I am not alone. I have an amazing guest. She goes by the name of Niki Kelly. What's going on today, Niki?
Hey, there's a lot going on today. It's been a busy week in Panama City.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, hopefully is this the end of your day? Do you get to go home after this?
I do get to go home after this. I wish it was the end of the work week, but I think my work week's going to continue on, but that's okay. It's all good stuff.
Well, hopefully this can be a good end of the day then. How's that sound?
Oh, yes, that sounds wonderful.
So you mind if I introduce you to the folks listening via your bio?
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it.
Niki Kelly is the executive director of Girls Inc. of Bay County. Ms. Kelly has a bachelor's degree in criminology with a minor in psychology and a master's in management, both from the University of South Florida. She spent 12 years working in community mental health and addiction services, followed by more than 10 years in refugee and immigrant services. Niki Kelly relocated to Panama City Beach in the spring of 2014 and joined the leadership team at Girls Inc. shortly thereafter. Since then, Ms. Kelly has led Girls Inc. on an aggressive growth plan, expanding services to more girls in Bay County, putting the organization on a solid footing that enables to persevere following the devastation caused by Hurricane Michael in 2018. For her response to the hurricane, Ms. Kelly was awarded the Humanitarian of the Year Award by the Panama City Beach Chamber of Commerce and the Outstanding Community Leadership Award by the Girls Inc. National Organization. That's amazing. That's really powerful stuff.
It is powerful stuff. I still actually haven't really wrapped my head around getting those awards because they kind of came out of nowhere.
Well, sounds like they came out of some pretty serious hard work.
Yes. A whole lot of hard work, but I looked around at all of the people doing a whole lot of hard work, and there were probably a whole lot more people who deserve those awards more so than me. But the nicest thing about getting both of those awards is that they didn't speak just to my work. They spoke very much to the work of our organization and what we do every single day, hurricanes or not. So it was wonderful to have that acknowledgement.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So before we jump into it, I like to start the interview by sharing, there's the bios are really powerful and they don't really allow us to get to know the person on a personal level.
No, they don't.
So I'm sure you've done this icebreaker, but if you could finish this prompt, if you really knew me, you'd know that.
If you really knew me, you'd know that I'm not nearly as serious as I come across, and I am way more fun than people give me credit for.
I second that. That should be on a shirt. Way more fun than they give me credit for. Oh. So let's do a little bit of the origin story, comic book one. Did you always know you wanted to be a executive director of a nonprofit?
No, never, ever crossed my mind. Somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, what did I want to be when I was 12? And I was like, well, depending upon the day, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be a pediatrician. At one point, I wanted to be an astronaut. And I always wanted to be on the U.S. national soccer team. So yeah, being a nonprofit leader, I didn't even know what that was. Really didn't know what that was solidly until probably a good 15, 20 years ago.
So what was the pathway to the nonprofit world then?
There had always been this part of me that felt that it was incredibly important to help others. So again, as a kid, helping animals was, kind of this natural thing growing up. I had pets. There were lots of animals in our lives. And I always enjoyed helping other people. And so there was this natural evolution to just wanting to make a difference. And that kind of started right after high school when I was working in an after school program, and that evolved to summer camp. And in that, I realized that there were a bunch of kids that, they weren't all the same. There were some that really needed a lot more help than others, and they were facing, a whole lot of greater challenges. And, when I went off to college, I started talking to professors about, what is the best route for this? You talked about my degrees in my bio, and that took an evolution of its own. I started out with an associate's degree in human services and thought I was going to get a degree in psychology, until I transferred to the University of South Florida and found out that a degree in psychology was really about studying rats in cages, and it was all research. And the people who were teaching my classes, they couldn't have identified a schizophrenic if they had walked through the room. And so I changed up my degree field to criminology, because criminology is really applied psychology. It is actually working with people who have a variety of different things that are going on. They may have a full-blown diagnosis of some sort. They may not. They may just have behavioral issues, whatever it might be. But it fit more with what I wanted to do. And one thing led to another. I started out working in children's mental health services. That led to adult mental health services. That opened the door to working with people who'd been found guilty by reason of mental disease or defect when I was living in Connecticut, and helping those folks to make a transition back out into the community. And I thought that I was getting burned out with that. And when I came back to Florida, I found this amazing job working with refugees and immigrants through the Florida Center for Survivors of Torture. And as things have evolved, I went from torture survivors to refugee youth to immigrants of all kinds who needed citizenship help, to now working with girls of all ages with all kinds of, beautiful futures in front of them. All of my nonprofit work. The populations may have changed, the circumstances may have changed, but the mission is always the same. It's to help other people to find their greatest potential and to find their strengths and build those strengths so that they can have the best possible life they can have, and to be a voice for them if they need that. So it's all just kind of evolved. And management just kind of, you work someplace long enough, they make you do more work. So that's kind of a cool thing.
That's awesome. And then that's where we connected, when you were working in the refugee services, right?
Yes. I was working for refugee services, doing the refugee youth programs, which allowed me the opportunity to be able to volunteer with Community Tampa Bay and Anytown, which is absolutely probably one of the coolest experiences I have had. I keep trying to convince people here that they need to figure out how to do Anytown here in Panama City, because these kids need it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Everywhere.
Yeah. Everywhere. They need to take it to Congress. Those kids need it. Yeah.
There you go. How have you seen the nonprofit field changing over the years?
In many ways, I think nonprofit leaders have come to realize that they actually are business leaders and they're running businesses. And so smart nonprofit leaders have learned to take more from the for-profit sector, and how to apply those principles to their nonprofit work to help build and grow the services that they're offering to get them to more people who need it. It's a different way of thinking for a lot of nonprofit folks. It's, there you still get your grassroots mom and pop kind of things going on, but sooner or later, you've got to figure out how to run a business.
I love where we're going. So, so it's more than, and I'm throwing in my own opinion, more than like just caring isn't going to keep the lights on. Just caring about the
No, it's
mission.
No, it's not. And it's funny now that I'm an executive director, I don't get to spend as much time on the mission as I would like. I would love to be able to spend more time with our girls. Probably the biggest treat for me is that every summer I get to be a part of taking them on college tours and being a part of STEM camp. Otherwise, it's budgets and policy writing and advocacy events and trying to figure out how to keep the lights on and these days how to build a new building. But yeah, there's a lot of business in what we're doing.
What do you think would be your advice, or what are some of the overlooked business aspects of the nonprofit world that some people that are in it could benefit from hearing you shed a little bit of insight into?
I got a really good nugget of advice this past year from the now retired CEO of our national organization, Judy Redenberg. She said that nonprofit leaders need to stop making budgets that balance to zero. Every budget you make each year should have a profit because you need that to sustain you in the year going forward. And it was really interesting to hear somebody to say that, because I had always come up through this old way of thinking that you can't make a profit, therefore whatever budget you make has got to balance out to zero. You don't want to lose money, but you can't make any money, and that is it's a false narrative. It's a false way of thinking, because you absolutely have to make money this year in order for next year to happen, and so you should plan for that in your budgeting.
And it comes to mind too, for me, so many grants, you'll lose funding or you won't even get funding if
Yeah.
you didn't make money, if you were at a deficit.
Right. Yes, exactly. And many people don't realize that. They think it's bad, it's taboo that you're showing that you're making money on the books. With the hurricane that came through last year, in order to get FEMA funding, we had to apply for an SBA loan through the Small Business Administration first. And when I met with them, the guy looked at me and he said, "You realize you had positive cash flow last year? Like this was a bad thing." And I said, "We've worked really hard to have positive cash flow. That's the only way we're able to grow." And he's like, "Okay, well, yeah, then yeah, you can have a loan and you're going to have to pay it back." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." That's what business is about. But he was just baffled that we had cash flow and we thought it was a good thing.
If you don't mind sharing, what were some of the things when you said we worked hard to do that? Do you mind sharing some of the things that you did, if you can?
Yeah. Probably the toughest thing that we did when I first started, we spent a whole year really analyzing all of the many different types of fundraising activities that we were involved in and looking at the return on investment from a different perspective. Our board of directors was kind of accustomed to looking at money in and money out and, okay, so what was the net raised? But they weren't looking at how much time was being invested in all of these different things. And we had so many different little tiny activities that we were doing that would require our board of directors to volunteer so much time almost every other weekend to make maybe $1,000. They were putting in all kinds of hours for nothing. And so I laid it all out for them, and I calculated all the hours of the volunteers, of the staff that went into every little thing that we did that year. And I used the volunteer rate that the IRS comes up with. Every year, the IRS sets a dollar amount for what a volunteer hour is worth. And so I calculated that in to determining what was our true return on all of our fundraising activities. And in the end, we were actually losing money on most of our events. We were losing huge amounts of money on some of them. And I told them, I said, all right, so we're going to cut all of these out. And we are going to focus on 3 big things. And we're going to put all of our time and all of our energy into making those truly a good return, something that is truly productive, that was going to actually raise money for us instead of just making us super busy. And it was a big leap of faith for our directors to take. They're like, we're going to be losing out on all this money. I said, we've already lost that money. It's not actually here. So we're not going to lose anything. And we went from making roughly $40,000 to $50,000 total in all of our fundraising activities in 2014 to making over $50,000 in our event 2 weeks ago. In one event, not the whole year. So it took a lot of hard work and a lot of convincing. We lost a lot of board members in that process because they really thought it was a bad move to cut these things that we had been doing for so long.
Well, first of all, snapping it up for the 50K, great work.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there just at the end, because you're telling me this so calmly, but I've done so many board coaching and strategic plans myself that very rarely can you keep, I'm now giving background for those listening. Very rarely are you able to move a board through the kind of transformational way of looking at fundraising.
Yeah, it's a really good point that it's hard to move a board through something like that. And nonprofit leaders have to be willing to embrace that it's okay for board members to say, you know what, this isn't for me, and to lose some of them. It gives you the opportunity to bring in those who can be fully on board with what you're trying to do. It's scary, but it's a good thing.
But what about, people are listening and thinking to themselves, yeah, but, what if it's board members who are, giving substantially themselves and pulling in a substantial amount of money that they're fundraising themselves? Like, is it worth pushing a board members like that, like pushing a change if you're going to lose a board member like that?
Well, here's the thing. And we've been having a lot of these conversations lately about how we cultivate donors, and that our donors the relationship needs to be with our mission, and it needs to be with the organization. It shouldn't be tied to any one board member. It shouldn't be tied to me. It shouldn't be tied to my staff. They should be giving and investing in the organization because they believe in the mission. They want to see what we do regardless of who comes and goes. And so that too has been a mindset shift for the board to really work on making the relationship with us instead of having the relationship be with them. Because it's true, you lose certain board members, you lose the donors that are tied to them, and that's a flaw in the fundraising. It can be challenging to build the relationship between the donor and the organization so that you keep them regardless of who moves on. And if your board members are only supporting you because you believe what they believe, then it's not true support, and you're going to lose them eventually anyways. If they're supporting you because they believe in the mission, they're going to keep doing that whether they stay on the board or not.
Yes. I'm loving this. Side question. Are you okay with me asking these kind of questions about your board and all that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have very open, transparent conversations all the time. I have a fabulous board, and I absolutely love them. And I love that they like to have these conversations. When they hired me, they gave me two goals. They said, change the culture and grow the organization. And they didn't tell me what they meant by either one of those things. And they didn't tell me how they wanted me to get there. They're just like, make it happen. And they have been on board with me all the way. Now, they've pushed back on a few things. They've been, a little reluctant about some things, but they have trusted the process, and I trust them. I trust them enough, and I respect them enough to make sure that I educate them enough along the process. I make sure they've got all the information that they need. I make sure that I listen to all of their concerns. I don't know everything. And so, that's what I need them for. I don't know everything. So I need to hear what they have to share with me. Moving to Panama City, you talk about culture shock. This is a very different place in Tampa Bay. And I needed them to, make sure that I wasn't way out in left field with some of my ideas, because this is a small town. This is a small southern town with its own drama and its own challenges, and I had to figure out how to navigate that. So you've got to have that respect and communication with your board in order for it to be a team effort to move forward.
So the other thing that I'm really appreciating about what you're talking about, and something that I'm able to infer, and so I want to bring it out for folks, is how are you able to do that kind of organizational shift in terms of moving people with big ideas? And because a lot of people sometimes think the only way to do this is like, this is what we're going to do, and that's how we're going to do it. You know what I mean? Which I know that's not what you did. So
No. I use data as much as I possibly can. Data is one of the surest ways to communicate a message so that people are going to truly understand it, and they're going to understand that you are giving them solid, factual information. You can't just go in and say, hey, this will be a cool thing to do. I think it'll work. You've got to show them that it works. You got to show them that it's worked in other places. You've got to show them how you can make it work in this place. And so as much as I could rely on data and other organizations who had done similar things, and I pulled a lot of information from, organizations that were of similar size, doing similar work in similar communities and showing how it could work. That's, to me, that has been the easiest way of, making sure that I'm addressing their fears by educating them and giving them as much information as I can possibly get to them.
And what about when you notice that, like when the conflict comes up, or how do you bring grace and, like the things that we do in our mission and our programs, how do you bring that kind of respect and dignity to when someone's not getting it and needs to be transitioned off? How do you do that?
Well, that's kind of an easy thing for us. Our mission is to inspire all girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And we routinely remind our board members that if we are not able to role model what it means to be strong, smart, and bold, then we might as well close the doors. And sometimes when we're afraid of a decision, when we're scared of where it might go, when it's uncharted territory, sometimes that's when we really got to tap into the being strong and being bold part of things and going, okay, we've done our due diligence. We've looked at all the data. We've done all the research. We're as sound and as sure as we can be. Now we've got to take the leap and make it happen. That has been an easy thing for us to do with our staff. It's like, look, hey, we tell these girls they got to try it. We need to try. We need to be able to put ourselves out there and make things happen.
So then, for myself and you and those of us who like the business side, I got to ask you that, but we know most people, when it comes to nonprofits, they want to hear about the program stuff.
Oh, yeah.
How have you seen programming in the nonprofit world evolve, so it can adequately respond to the moment that we're living in?
I think that is where advocacy has become a much bigger role in nonprofit programming. Because there are so many things happening in our world these days that actually attack the advances that nonprofits are making in the work that they're doing. And so you have to learn how to be advocates, and you have to learn how to make the people that you serve, you have to learn how to teach them to be advocates. So, for example, there's a lot of programs that Girls Inc. offers across the country that specifically addresses reducing teen pregnancy. And, a lot of our organizations received funding through the federal government from the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Program. And this is one of the few programs that had all kinds of data that supports that kind of programming actually does reduce the number of teen pregnancies. It shows that when you're educating girls about their bodies, about how to not become pregnant, about what to do if they are pregnant, about how to raise a child, about what it costs to raise a child, that this reduces the number of pregnancies. And in turn, it also then reduces the number of teenagers and women who are seeking abortions because they are taking control of their bodies, taking control of when and how they choose to have a child. And so this program has been unbelievably successful. The current administration decided, for whatever reason, that they were not going to fund this program anymore. And in the middle of the budget year, I think it was a year and a half ago, they cut all the funding to those programs. And so one of the things that we have done on our advocacy side is to continue to advocate for that funding to be reinstated, but to also teach our girls how to advocate. We've had a bunch of girls that have gone up to Congress to talk to their elected officials. They've done a lot of letter writing campaigns. They talk to their local elected officials. They talk to the school boards. And so that's just one example, I think, where advocacy has become a stronger part of programming. And you see this in other nonprofit industries, particularly in the mental health fields, where a lot of your community-based mental health programs are actually teaching the individuals that they serve how to advocate for their rights, how to advocate for the right for treatment, how to advocate for their rights to be able to work, to be able to have different kinds of accommodations if needed, how to find their voice and use their voice. And that's becoming a part of the program services in a lot of nonprofit settings.
And have you seen some success coming out of, because I think we all there's sometimes can be an apathy around, oh, it's not worth it. I mean, you're in a southern state. Those senators, those people aren't actually going to listen. Have you found some success coming from that?
There has been a lot of success actually coming out of that. I mean, we do have that fear and that concern all the time of, they're not going to listen to us. They're not going to believe us. And this small southern town has continued to surprise me in a really good way in the number of issues where they're actually willing to come to the table and talk with us. And they are closer to being on the same page with us than a lot of people realize. I think we haven't always given people the credit for being able to have different views and different opinions than their political party.
So how do we find that ability to listen, to come to the table ourselves and to bring others to the table? Do you have any insights or advice on that?
You have to truly care about the other person. You have to really want to understand how the issue at hand impacts them and impacts their world. If you're only wanting them to understand your side of it, then you're not ready for the discussion. You've got to come into that discussion genuinely showing them that you actually care about them and you want to find the win-win if possible. You can't just show up insisting on changing somebody's mind about something. You've really got to care about where they're at, and you got to actively listen to what they have to say.
I love that. I appreciate that. Since you kind of the mission that y'all are doing, you're really working with young people. What are some of the issues you're seeing come up that maybe weren't being addressed a couple of years ago, even, that seems to be something we should be aware of for those of us who are doing youth development?
There are so many issues. Screen time is huge. I don't think people realize the significant impact that all of the electronic devices are having on young people. There's a lot of research that's starting to come out now about the impact that it's having on the development of the brain, but even more importantly, the impact. It is truly an addiction. They've actually started developing, rehab centers to get people off of their electronic devices. We see kids all the time. I mean, when you come into one of our programs, you got to leave your phone in your bag. We don't want to see it. You can't have it out. And for some of the young folks that we work with, I mean, you'd think that we took all their food away for a year. It is truly an addictive response. And it's causing a lot more damage than people realize. And if, I applaud the schools that have put in place, phone-free zones and phone-free time, because it is. Tell you what, I'm just grateful that the internet wasn't around when I was a kid. I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't have escaped everything that was happening at school when I went home. When I was in school, if there was a problem going on, if there was drama between kids, when you went home, you went home. It didn't follow you. It wasn't on the internet. It wasn't everybody talking about it. It was just done. And these kids can't get away from it. And the challenges that they're dealing with, all the Instagram stuff and who's got how many likes. I seriously applaud Instagram for their move to try and hide the number of likes that different posts have, to try and bring some of that really serious, intense stuff down, because it's creating mental health problems for our kids. Those things didn't exist several years ago. Throw into all of that the increase in what appears to be an increase in violence. I know overall violence in our country is down. The severity of the violence that's out there, the trauma that comes with just doing drills to be prepared for any sort of active shooters or other kinds of violent acts on their school campus. It forces kids to grow up and deal with things that they shouldn't have to deal with, hopefully ever. But they at least shouldn't have to deal with it until they're an adult. And now we're making 5 and 6 year olds deal with these things.
So then, as a leader of a nonprofit, what process do you use to reflect as a team how maybe a program that's been around for years might need to change or be fine-tuned to take into consideration these new needs that come up?
That's like a regular conversation here. We look at some of our programs. One of our big national programs it's a media literacy program, and it's designed to teach girls about understanding all of the different messages that they are bombarded with through all the different media sources. But then it also is geared towards helping them to understand careers in various media fields. And, it got revised by our national office, I would say maybe 7-8 years ago. And most of it is outdated at this point. There's some of it that still holds true. But when we're sitting there looking at it and going through it, we're like, okay, well, we need to add some stuff in here about, Snapchat and TikTok and, all of these different sorts of mediums. And we need to add in more discussions around, Instagram and the messaging that kids are sending to themselves. Now it's not just advertisers and movies that are sending them messages. It's kids themselves are sending messages. So we are constantly trying to look at all of our materials and making sure that they are as up to date as possible. And that's hard in our current society. Everything changes so fast.
One of the challenges with the nonprofit world too is there's so much to do. How do you find time to prioritize this, to prioritize culture and how internally we treat each other, how internally we're taking care of each other? How do you balance that between needing to serve out there and needing to serve the team?
That is a good question. It is a tricky balance. And I'll be honest with you. Sometimes the prioritizing doesn't happen because there is so much to be done all of the time. I think one of the things that we have done here specifically culture-wise is to make sure that we are all always looking out for one another. And for as much as I will tell my staff that, they need to take a break or this report doesn't have to get done right now, they need to go do something else. They will also turn the tables around on me and be like, all right, we're going to take this off your plate. You're going home. Because sometimes we need that. This is a special place. And I think probably all Girls Inc. affiliates across the country feel that special magic that we have. Everybody here just so genuinely cares about one another. They're so invested in the mission, and everybody gets that we can't give the girls our absolute best if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not taking care of each other. So we do our best, but the mountain of work is always there. And at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to say, it's enough. I'm going home.
On that note, what are your thoughts on, there's such a burnout rate in the nonprofit world. How can we, those of us listening who are doing nonprofit work or mission-driven work, whether it's in, government or whatever, how can we be taking better care of ourselves and, thinking that long-term, that longevity, if this is a career I want to do the rest of my life?
Right. Self-care is critical. And you've got to be intentional about it. You've got to put it on your calendar. You've got to make time for yourself. So whether that's yoga class or whether that's, your nightly run or your morning walk, whatever it is, you've got to make sure that it happens and that nothing is allowed to interrupt that space. One of my employees made this point just the other day. She had made an appointment for some good, solid self-care, put it on her calendar, and something came up, and she's like, oh, well, I can move this. And I said, that's why you put it on your calendar. You put it on your calendar to make sure it was going to happen. If you keep moving it, it's not going to happen. So we have to hold ourselves to task. You got to take your vacations. There's a reason why company gives you time off. You've got to take care of yourself, and you need more than a long weekend. You've got to take a full week. If you're lucky, take a 2-week vacation, because it takes a whole week just to forget about work. But you've got to be intentional about it, and you've got to listen to other people when they tell you you're not doing okay.
Specifically, and maybe this is the one you can pass on if you'd like, though, a lot of, nonprofit leaders or the nonprofit think tanks, that specific question around burnout rate, they find that the development director is the highest turnover and burnout rate.
Absolutely. We didn't have a development director when I started here, and that was part of our growth plan. I recently added a development director, and I was determined to not burn her out. I was also determined to not be one of those executives that fires their development director right after the big annual gala. That happens in too many nonprofits for some bizarre reason. But there is incredible burnout. It is the hardest job, I think, in a nonprofit, to spend every day, all day long, trying to figure out how to bring money in to keep the doors open. And, the majority of the time you're getting rejected. And so you've got to be strong enough to deal with all of that constant rejection. You do so much work, and, it doesn't always pan out. Most of the time it doesn't pan out. So you've got to learn how to celebrate the small successes, look at things differently, and executives have got to take care of those folks. They've got to understand that position is critical to the organization. So you've got to take extra special care of the person in that role.
Another thing with, especially the more you get away from programs, and this I'm explaining to folks listening, not to you, this, as you get into development director, executive director, and definitely board, the more diversity, equity, and inclusion seems to leave the equation, leave the people who are selected, leave the thought process. At least this is what I have found. So 2-part question. Do you find that to be true as well? Let's start there. Have you found this to be true as well?
Yes. And it is a constant challenge for us. Equity and inclusion is a big part of our mission and our vision and our values. but then you become limited by who is available to choose from, and who's interested in doing the work. And sooner or later, you have to make a decision, and it's a struggle for us. We've got a few openings on our board right now. It was a big conversation for us at our board meeting on Wednesday. Is okay, we need to find more men. We need to find more people of color. We need to find some younger people. We need to find a parent. We need these different voices and these different viewpoints on our board. And so the rest of the board now has their marching orders to try and find these folks. But we all recognize how hard it's going to be when we look at the possible pool that is available to us.
So a lot of people might have been listening to that list and thinking, okay, I can see that. But when you said diversity, you want men. Like, what do you mean? Aren't most boards and leadership men? What do you mean you need diversity? You're including men in that?
Well, we are Girls Inc. And so women tend to gravitate to us. And for our business side of things, but very much so for our girls, they need to see that there are amazing men in this world who are there to stand side by side with them, be supportive, be encouraging partners, be innovative partners. So we want to be able to role model that for them. And we need that perspective. There's this misconception that because we're trying to raise strong, smart, and bold women, that we're somehow trying to teach them that men are not important, and that is absolutely not it. We're trying to teach them how to figure out who the good guys are and to stick with them.
So the reason I also asked that too is because I've noticed, this has been my experience again, curious if it's yours, that there's a deficit of men in the nonprofit field in general, especially in the programs. If you have also found that to be true, why do you think that is?
I'm not sure why that is. I understand it here at Girls Inc. I get that. But we also encountered this a lot when I worked in refugee and immigrant services, and also when I worked in the mental health realm. I don't know. We would get hundreds of applications for open jobs, and I'd be lucky if a handful of them were men, and of those, very few that were qualified. I think it's a great question. I would love to know where they are. I don't know if it's that men gravitate more to private business. We certainly know that men are graduating with more of the engineering and computer science degrees out of the colleges. But there's a lot of that work in the nonprofit sector. So I'm not sure where they are. We'd love for them to come join us.
Yeah, I appreciate your reflections on that. And some people might be listening and thinking that we're talking in binaries, mostly girls and men. So, bringing some diversity to gender. How do you address that at Girls Inc.?
At Girls Inc., we have a very inclusive policy. Our national organization actually put out a national position paper a couple of years ago on gender identity, and we are here to serve all girls, however it is that they identify themselves. And if they feel that this is the most positive place for them to be and that we can be most helpful to them, then that's what we're going to do. When the position paper came out from our national organization, I had to run it through our board and the staff, and I knew there was going to be a little kind of, what are you talking about? What, like all of a sudden, like we're going to have all these boys who are dressed up like girls trying to get in here? And I'm like, I don't think that's going to be our problem, especially here in the South. I said, more than likely, what we're going to encounter are girls in our program who identify more with being a boy, who have parents who are trying to force them to wear dresses and force them to be little princesses and little girls, that's going to be our bigger challenge. And we have certainly seen that on a few occasions. We've got more and more of our middle and high school girls who are, trying to figure out exactly who they are. So we've got several who, come in and proudly identify themselves as being non-binary, gender non-conforming, whichever way they wish to identify. And we're cool with that. And we don't really have any issues here, not amongst the girls. On occasion, some of our supporters will be like, what are y'all doing over there? And we're like, we're helping everybody. It's what we're doing over here.
For a nonprofit leader or person who's in programming or youth development in general, listening particularly to this part of our interview, how do you think that they can, they're wondering how can they be more responsive and supportive to young people going through something similar to what you're describing? What would be your advice to them?
I think the most important way to be supportive and responsive is to listen to what the child is saying about how they feel about themselves, about how they feel about the world around them and their space in that world, and to try really, really hard to not put any judgment on it, and to just create a safe space. And that is one of the things that we strive to do here, and so many of our donors and other supporters are truly behind that concept of an absolutely, truly safe space, a space that is not only physically safe, but a space where our girls can come in here and they can try out new skill sets, they can learn new things, but they can also express themselves and understand that they have the right to express themselves uniquely and be their own wonderful, independent, individual self.
And then what about for the fundraiser or the executive director listening who also agrees with that and also has funders who are, threatening to pull funding or those kind of things from taking this stance of, advocating for inclusion? What would be your advice to them?
It's a really difficult spot to be in. If you have a relationship with that donor, sit and have a conversation with them about why they supported you in the first place. And if they truly feel that pulling their support because their personal values may differ from your organizational values, then it might be a really tough decision to make. But I would be willing to say it's maybe better to say thank you for your support. If you change your mind, come back and see us again. Sometimes it's better to pass on the money than to compromise on your values.
Agreed. I agree with that. And I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, of course. I mean, why would you say anything else? But it's tough when you think, just to give context to people, like I say no to them, maybe then we don't have the program at all.
Yeah, but there's other people who are out there, and there's other sources of funding, and there's other ways of getting things done. And that is what nonprofits do so well. They don't just give up. They say, okay, well, we got to find some other way to do this. We got to find some other way to make it happen. I have seen more nonprofits make things happen with close to nothing. We find ways to get it done. And sometimes that is to our shortfall, because people will be like, well, if you can do it with nothing, then go for it with nothing. But we find a way. We persevere and we get it done.
I feel like some nonprofit leaders listening right now are going to make that last 45 seconds their alarm clock. That was awesome. We do get it done. You tell them.
We do. Seriously, what is the other alternative? Mm-hmm. I mean, the other alternative, you don't get it done, then the people that you're serving lose out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amen. Before we transition to the next part of our interview, is there anything that you wanted to talk about about Girls Inc., about the work that you're doing, anything like that, that you wanted to speak to that we haven't yet?
I think that the work that Girls Inc. is doing and has been doing since the Civil War, which most people don't realize we've been around that long, it is critical to our future. And I know I talk a lot about there's research for this, that, and the other, but there actually is. There's a lot of research out there that shows that when you invest in girls and women, you are investing in the future of your whole community. And when you can make that investment, you're going to impact the whole world. And it's powerful. And I'm grateful that we get to see it every day with our girls, to see the transformations that they go through, to see the excitement in their eyes, to try something that years ago was just something that the boys got to do. And to know that these young ladies are going to be true leaders of the future, and are going to take care of all of the rest of us, because they're not willing to just sit by and let it all fall apart. So it's exciting stuff.
I usually wait until the very end to ask people for the links, but that was a perfect transition into people getting out their wallets. So why don't you tell people where they can support your work now, and we'll plug it again at the end too.
Yes, the best way to support us is to go to girlsincofbaycounty.org. Again, that's girlsincofbaycounty.org. That supports my organization directly. I know that you've got some followers who might really want to jump on board and support some of our other affiliates as well as our national organization. So I encourage people to look at girlsinc.org to get our bigger national picture.
Perfect. And we'll plug everything one more time. And of course, everybody, show notes today, tomrell.com/Niki, Niki, tomrell.com/Niki. So if you're like, oh my God, Girls Inc., what? I'm on the go. Tom, help. That's where we'll have everything so you can donate directly. One more nonprofit question, and then we're going to start to close out here. What's it like working for a national organization? You've mentioned that a couple of times. What is that like? Do you each have your own board? Do you have a national board? Do they share funding? Can you give us some of that behind the scenes?
Right. So I think maybe the easiest way to kind of describe our relationship with our national organization is kind of that, maybe like the franchise model. So we are our own independent organization. All of our finances are separate. All of our tax status is separate. We have our own separate board. We make a lot of independent decisions, but we benefit from the national organization. We benefit from the branding. We benefit from the research. It's where all of our curriculum comes from. So we have a great relationship with our national organization. So we see it as definitely being a big plus to us. It is a treasure trove of resources and support. And as a nonprofit leader, there is really nothing more exciting than the entire network of Girls Inc. executives. You talk about some brilliant, powerful, passionate people who are working hard every day and making a big difference across our country. And it's awesome to be a part of that group and to know that they are all there if I need help, if I need guidance, advice, if I need a policy I don't want to write from scratch that somebody can send me. It's really nice to have that level of support.
I love that. Thank you. Are these questions that you get often? Because you have amazing responses.
I get some of these often, yes. The national question has come up a few times lately because people haven't really understood how that works.
Yeah, and it's a struggle that I've heard like the Boys and Girls Club have too, where people think, oh, y'all are this huge organization. Why do you need my money?
And exactly. Yeah, no. Yeah, just because their logo's on every baseball game doesn't mean they're getting all that money.
No. Exactly. Especially not the individual branches who have to fundraise for themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
So you might have heard me say at the beginning that this is my year of adventure. In fact, you're probably going to be one of the first year of adventure interviews.
Ah, very
So,
cool.
yes. So, one of the reasons I have a year of is to set an intention for myself, but also to have a conversation with people. Because most of my questions, I don't ask anybody the same question, except for this one is, for you, what is an adventure that you are having currently or you plan to have in 2020?
So it was the unintended adventure that was brought to us by Hurricane Michael. Never ever in my life did I think that I would learn anything about how FEMA operates, learn anything about the deep inner workings of the insurance industry. And I never thought that I would get the opportunity to build our own center, to be more of a community center and to have such an impact in our community here beyond our girls. And so with all the damage that Hurricane Michael did to our building and our community, we've been on this long adventure for the past year with the very slow process with FEMA, which I'm learning a lot of people don't stick with. And I totally understand that because it is a grueling marathon. But we have just learned that we are very, very close, probably 2 steps away from having a fully funded FEMA project that will provide us with the more than enough funding to completely rebuild our facility, make it bigger and better than what it has been, to make sure that it's got everything in it so that we are that space in the community that everybody wants to be a part of. It'll have community meeting space in it. It's going to have a full-size gymnasium that other basketball teams can come and use. It's going to beautify our little corner and hopefully be a part of something bigger in 2020 for our whole community.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I'm getting chills. That is so, congratulations.
Thank you. It is a true adventure. I'm on the hunt for architects and engineers at the moment. A whole other area I never thought I'd learn anything about. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And just so folks don't get confused, let me say it for you. That doesn't mean they don't need your donations.
Oh, we absolutely need their donations because FEMA only covers 75%. So, yeah, we've got to take care of the rest of it.
And so once again, where can folks not only support Girls Inc., but if they want to specifically reach out to you on social media or anything like that and say how awesome you are, pick your brain, meet for a donor meeting, anything like that, where can they do that?
The best place to really find us is on Facebook, Girls Inc. of Bay County on Facebook. That is going to have all of the most up-to-date information of what's going on program-wise, what we have going on with fundraising events. It's probably also the easiest way to connect with me is to shoot me a message through our Facebook page. But you can also go to our website, girlsincofbaycounty.org, and go through the Contact Us platform if you want to send me an email if you've got questions. And if you want to make a donation, our website has got secure, fast, easy way to donate.
Awesome. Once again, show notes, tomrell.com/Niki, tomrell.com/NIKI, tomrell.com/Niki. I have, how they do the Facebook memories?
Yes.
So I just had a memory pop up this week that said, does anyone else feel like super cool when Niki Kelly likes one of your Facebook posts?
I remember that. And I was like, what is that about? Tom is super cool.
So, this is such an honor to get to sit down and have an interview with you. Somebody that, when I was local, we were both local, I admired, and then I've admired all the ways you're using social media to advocate and to inform, but then also, what you've dedicated your life to. You're a role model for so many of us. And I just want to thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. It really has. It's been wonderful to watch you follow your dreams and to accomplish all the positive things you are bringing to this world. So keep it up.
Thank you so much. And I cut my hair.
You did. You seriously cut your hair, and it looks fabulous.
So here's how we close it out. Is our ritual is for you to share an invitation with those who are listening. So it's an invitation, something you'd like to invite them to become, to consider, to evolve into, to take an adventure on. What is your invitation?
I think I would love to invite everyone to step outside your comfort zone, whether it's for an hour or a day or a weekend, and go and spend time with people you would not normally spend time with. Go to a synagogue for Saturday service. Go and, sit and talk with the folks at the local homeless shelter. Go and spend time with someone who looks different from you, who talks different than you. Spend real legitimate time with somebody else, even if it makes you feel incredibly uncomfortable to be in a place where you are clearly the outsider.
And if you don't mind me asking the follow-up, why?
You will walk away from that experience so fully enriched. And if you really open yourself up to it, you will become a much better person and a much more aware person. And you will look at the world very differently from there on out. I guarantee you that.
Agreed. Co-signed. Love that. Once again, thank you so much, Niki. I appreciate all that you do, and most of all for sharing your valuable time with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom. This was an absolute honor.
I'm glad to hear. And so all of those who are listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you. One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.